All right, this is borderline unbelievable given all that the 49ers have been through over the first month plus of this season. But the Philadelphia Eagles have lost at home to the Denver Broncos, meaning that San Francisco officially has the best record in the NFC. They are tied with Philadelphia at 4-1. Here is visual evidence following that Eagles loss. And you know what? The 49ers point differential isn't all that much worse than Philadelphia's either. It was a 4-point loss for the Eagles. The 49ers were +8, I believe, after the Rams game. Philadelphia was +20, so the Eagles are going to lose 4. They're +16. And all that different than the 4-1 49ers who you see down here. Detroit playing this afternoon. That just kicked off. They're at 3-1. So they can join the 49ers and the Eagles at 4-1. And Tampa Bay at 3-1 is playing the Seattle Seahawks right now in a game that we're going to watch very closely for NFC West purposes and also for the 49ers' next opponent purposes, because Tampa Bay is where San Francisco heads to next. But, let's put it this way. The Baltimore Ravens are currently very depleted, right? They're missing Lamar Jackson. Look what happened to them in this Sunday without Lamar, without some defensive players. The defense is terrible for the Ravens this year. But look what happened to the Ravens today. We're going to get the scores up here. 44-10. You could see it over here on the right against the Houston Texans. This is what normally happens to a depleted team in the NFL. They lose games by a lot of points. The 49ers have not only stayed in every single game they've been in, they've won 80% of their games despite missing their QB1 for over half of the season, despite missing their top 3 receivers. That was against the Rams, one of the better teams in football the other day, despite missing their top edge rusher, one of the best in the game, Nick Bosa. I mean, the 49ers were down to a skeleton crew on Thursday night. They went into LA and they won. Meanwhile, the Ravens missing Lamar Jackson. Again, we'll put the score back up on the screen. This is what normally happens when a football team is down a lot of guys. But the 49ers just keep on winning. That's why I think it's fair to say that something special is happening in the Bay Area this year. That's why I said after the game against the Rams, okay, the 49ers, if they can get back to any semblance of health, will be Super Bowl contenders this year. Because the gritty part, the resilient part, that's the part that's impossible to teach. That's the part that's impossible to acquire. That's the part that you either have or you don't. I mean, you try to get the right combination of guys in the building. Usually, I think that it takes a certain mix of veterans who know how to win, veterans who've got that drive and desire to win, and young players who can bring that speed and that energy. And obviously, the 49ers lost that balance last year when they aged out. They got a little bit too old, and they got injured too. There were so many injuries. It was a perfect storm, though, that tripped up the 49ers in 2024, and they couldn't close out these games. They couldn't win with the margins being as thin as they are in the NFL. They were on the wrong side of them. But here in 2025, what the 49ers did over the offseason, they renovated the roster, and they've obviously struck the right chord formulaically to be able to win the games that they would have lost or did lose in 2024. Now, nobody is saying that the 49ers are a dominant team right now or that they're Super Bowl favorites right now. The point differential at 4-1 is +8, which you don't normally see. But we can say that they know how to win those close games. They didn't know how to win in the past. And we can say that that is a very, very valuable skill in a league featuring very tight margins. I mean, let's look at the schedule from today and look at some of the results from today. Right now, the game's happening. Tampa Bay is leading Seattle 3-0. That game is already through a quarter. So I'm going to let everybody go here in a few minutes. I want to go watch that Tampa Bay game, because that's who the 49ers play next. And then obviously the Seahawks are a division rival. Tampa Bay, by the way, is down Bucky Irving and Mike Evans. And they're going to be down those two guys next week against the 49ers. They're not going to get any healthier today either against the Seattle Seahawks. So the fact that the 49ers beat the Rams, now they have a chance to add icing onto the cake by turning around with extra rest to beat Tampa Bay next week as well. So they can solidify the NFC's best record at 5-1 in that game against the Bucks. Another NFC West matchup happening right now. So Marvin Harrison Jr. catch a long ball from Kyler Murray early against the Titans. Bengals and the Lions. The Lions are probably going to win this game to move to 4-1 and join the 49ers and the Eagles at the top of the NFC with the best record. But that Lions win over the Ravens, nowhere near as impressive as it looked at the time, just given the state of Baltimore's defense. Commanders and Chargers has just started. And then I love the Monday night game, Chiefs and Jags. I think that Jags defense is going to send a message if they haven't already. But I think that people will start to understand why San Francisco was talking about Jacksonville's defensive line as being the best one that they faced, even better than the Rams. We'll see that against Kansas City. But on to the scores from this morning. Vikings over the Browns in London, 21-17. Here's the game that I've been talking a lot about. Texans, Ravens, 44-10. Panthers, that's tough for Mike McDaniel. They blew a 17-0 lead, and then they blew another late lead after the Jalen Waddle touchdown gave them the advantage right back. They couldn't hold Bryce Young down in that fourth quarter. 14 points for the Panthers. They win. The Colts are good. The Raiders are bad. One of those things is surprising, not the Raiders part. 40-6, Indianapolis over Las Vegas. The Saints, congratulations to them, their first win. The 49ers are going to get to play the Giants in about a month in New Jersey. And I will say that Jackson Dart, I know it was just his second start, but he is putting the ball into harm's way very, very often. That could be a game that looks, it was questionable there for a while. I know that people didn't expect much from the New York Giants, but I think with Russell Wilson at quarterback, they might have threatened the 49ers more than with Jackson Dart, to be honest. I think that's going to be a rookie with a big learning curve. I don't know if he's going to figure it out and keep the ball out of harm's way in less than a month before the 49ers play them. Cowboys and Jets, that was not a competitive game. And then the one that we're talking about right now, the Broncos and the Eagles. Now, why don't we look at some of the stats of Broncos and Eagles? A fairly evenly matched game. I mean, both teams are right around 5 yards of play. Broncos actually outgained Philadelphia 358-302. And Denver outpossessed the Eagles. You can see here in the bottom right, they had the ball for over 34 minutes. So I think Denver deserved to win that football game. It looked like it was really, really hot in Philadelphia, and it was like a Levi's Stadium-like look on the sunny side of the field there at Lincoln Financial. A lot of empty seats. So those Philadelphia fans did not want to sit out in the sun, and then they saw their own team melt as that game went along. It turned into pitch and catch for Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton and Ingram for Denver. They were just moving down the field. Philadelphia's defense was not able to stiffen up when it mattered most. They had a 17-3 lead in that game, and they ended up losing 21-17. So that is 18 unanswered points for the Denver Broncos. And you know what? The Philadelphia offensive line that everybody always seems to glow about, 49ers fans included, like, oh my God, look at the Philly offensive line. Why can't the 49ers do this? Well, when it came to pass desperate mode for Philadelphia in this game at the end, they couldn't block Denver either. Like, it doesn't matter who you are up front in this league. If you have to pass, you're probably going to get beat, which is why it's so unsustainable to go back there and drop back 50 times a game, which also makes it all the more remarkable that Mac Jones was able to do what he was able to do against the Rams on 49 pass attempts and 56 dropbacks the other night. The people that are skewering the 49ers offensive line for having some reps where they lost in pass protection, I just don't think you understand the dynamics of the modern league. If you are not running the ball effectively, or if you can't run the ball effectively, and by the way, both of those things I think are happening in Philadelphia. Saquon is averaging 3.1 yards per carry right now. That's the same as Christian McCaffrey. What did Saquon do today? Saquon today was only 6 carries for 30 yards. Like, it was 11 for 45 on the ground for the Eagles. So they weren't rushing the ball effectively. You put your offensive line, just like the 49ers, into pass protect mode, and it's not going to look as good. It doesn't matter if you're the Eagles with Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, or the 49ers with Trent Williams and Colton McKivitz on the edges. You're in a disadvantageous position as an offensive line, which is why the 49ers went to the quick release against the Rams. They knew that, okay, we're not running well, but we've got to get rid of the ball. We have to replicate the run game with a quick release pass game to keep this defensive line, which is pinning its ears back, at bay. And Mac executed a game plan that I don't think Jalen Hurts is capable of executing. I mean, it was rough for Jalen Hurts today. I feel that whenever he gets into modes where he has to take the game himself, when his team is only rushing for 45 yards, he looks slow. It doesn't look like he's reading the defense all too fast. It looks like he's throwing underneath way too often and forcing the Eagles to get into punting situations. It's not pretty football for Jalen Hurts. Whereas when the 49ers were in a very similar position as the Eagles against the Rams the other night, another good defensive front, just like Denver's, Mac Jones was quick. He was processing. The ball was out 2.4 seconds. And he gave his team, which was much more shorthanded than the Eagles tonight, on the road, even though the 49ers dominated the crowd at SoFi Stadium, he gave his team a chance. So, teams right now, that this is, if teams continue bottling up both run games, the Eagles and the 49ers, and I'm not saying that's going to continue to happen over the course of the whole season, but if that continues to happen the way that it's been happening with Barkley and McCaffrey both at like 3 yards a carry, it then turns to who has the better processor at quarterback. Because Jalen Hurts is very clearly reliant on a strong run game, whereas the 49ers are 4-1 right now, despite not having a strong run game. The 49ers don't have a single rushing touchdown. They're the only team in the NFL doesn't have one, and they're also near the bottom in the yards per carry. I think that will get going for all the reasons that I've discussed, because teams are trying to shut it down. The difference is in San Francisco, they've got either Purdy or Mac Jones, guys who have shown the ability to process and win without that run game. I mean, Purdy beat Seattle without one in week 1. Mac Jones beat LA without one just this past Thursday. You just saw what happened to Jalen Hurts against the good defense without a solid run game. And I think the 49ers have a massive, massive advantage under center. We can start having these NFC-wide discussions because the 49ers have the best record in the conference. 4-1. Tied with the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to keep an eye on the rest of these games. Just wanted to give you guys the quick update. By the way, Tampa Bay has opened up a 6-0 lead over the Seattle Seahawks. So after that game happens, I'll upload a video. We'll have a little bit of analysis about the 49ers' next opponent, the Tampa Bay Bucks, and how they did against the Seattle Seahawks. One thing I can tell you is that Tampa Bay is not going to get any healthier over the course of this game, win or lose. It is going to be a battle. It always is when you're playing up on that artificial turf in the Pacific Northwest. And the 49ers will have the advantage of more rest as they try to defend the best record in the NFC next week. They are 4-1 in Philadelphia, the second to last unbeaten in this league. Now it's only Buffalo. Buffalo coming in with that 4-0 record into this week, but they stand alone, undefeated at the top of the NFL. And the 49ers, they stand at the top of the NFC at 4-1. Talk to you later. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and have the notification bell on for the video that's going to be coming after the Seahawks-Buccaneers game. We'll talk to you soon.